Hi, and welcome. You're listening to the X22 Report. My name is Dave, and this is episode 687, and today's date is June 6th, 2015, and the title of this episode is Current Economic Collapse News Brief. Now, before I get started, I just want to make an announcement. Tomorrow, Sunday, I'll be posting the interview with John Rappaport. This has to do with the TPP, how it intertwines into pharmaceutical companies and vaccines. And if you are on the X22 Report alert system, you will get an email. If you subscribe to YouTube, the X22 Report Spotlight channel, you should get an email from YouTube. But if you don't, you can always come to the x22report.com site. You will see the interview on the right-hand side, or just go right to YouTube, type in X22 Report Spotlight, and you will see the new interview. Let's get right into the economic collapse news. Now, we understand that Greece completely missed that payment on June 5th. And they're taking that payment and they're rolling it into all the other payments. They're going to pay this at the end of the month. Now, one of the reasons why they couldn't make that payment at first is they're completely broke. They don't have the funds. Secondly, they received the agreement from the central banks, and they could not go along with this whatsoever. It crossed many of their red lines, including hiking taxes, privatizing strategic assets, cutting benefits, implementing austerity, cutting pensions for the poor. And he looked at this, and the government looked at this and said, no, we cannot do this whatsoever. If we push this agreement forward, we would have riots on our hand. And we can see right now that Greece is stuck. They're out of money, out of time, and they need to make some type of decision. And of course, they bought themselves some time by putting off this payment. They've been talking to Russia and to the BRICS system, and we see Greece is considering a membership in the BRICS New Development Bank, NDB. This is coming from the Greek Deputy Defense Minister. Greece's bilateral agreement with the BRICS countries has to do with what Greece and the BRICS countries are talking about on the question of development projects within Greece, and they're saying, yeah, this has nothing to do with their debt and things like that. But of course, as we know, they need to create economic growth. They need the funds. They need to go someplace where their economy, their country, the people can grow. And with the central bankers, it cannot grow. It will only contract with more debt. And they realize this, and they understand that there is no way the central bank is going to allow them to receive more funds without implementing cuts in pensions, austerity, selling off more of their country. So at this point in time, it does look like Greece is going to move in a completely different direction. Now, we understand the government is continually telling us that we don't have privacy. People love to be spied on. They love giving away their information to get a discount for stores. And we understand the government right now is trying to push CISA through, and this will allow the companies not to be liable for transferring your private information to the government, because all the people are for this and they want this to happen to stop terrorism, and the government needs to keep everyone safe. But we know this is completely fake, phony, and false. And it seems that all of this rhetoric coming out of the government is a lie about how the people want this and how the people love their information sold to different places and how the people are willing to give up their rights. Well, it seems like a new report into U.S. consumer attitude to the collection of personal data has highlighted the disconnect between commercial claims that web users are happy to trade privacy in exchange for benefits like discounts. The report, entitled "The Trade-Off Fallacy: How Marketers Are Misrepresenting American Consumers and Opening Them Up to Exploitation," is authored by 3 academics from the University of Pennsylvania and is based on a representative national cell phone and wireline phone survey of more than 1,500 Americans ages 18 or older. These are the key findings on American consumers. 91% disagree that if companies give me a discount, it is fair to exchange my personal information without me knowing. 71% disagree that it is fair for an online or physical store to monitor what I'm doing online when I'm there, in exchange for letting me use the store's wireless internet. 55% disagree that it's okay if a store where I shop uses information it has about me to create a picture of me that improves the services they provide for me. The report also flags up that large numbers of U.S. consumers are unaware of how their purchase and usage data can be sold or shared with third parties without their permission or knowledge. In many instances, falsely believing they have greater data protection rights than they are in fact afforded by law. One thing is clear, the great lie about online privacy is unraveling. We can see at this point in time, people are not happy with this. They don't want companies to transfer their information, and they don't want it to be sold or given away. They want their information to be private, to stay private. And of course the government, no, we need your information. Don't worry, we'll protect it. No, they're not going to protect it, and there's no reason why the government needs your information. Of course, they're using the excuse that they need it for these cyber attacks, that once we get your information of where you're purchasing, where you're going, your banking information, your credit card usage, that will help us determine where these cyber attacks are coming from, and we'll be able to stop it. No, that's completely ridiculous. And these stores and these online shops, it's all part of the same thing. It's all part of the fascistic system we're in right now, where government and corporations are melding into one, and we're seeing this right in front of our eyes right now. We see out in Ukraine, it doesn't look good for the Kiev government. There are over 3,500 people plus now protesting on the streets. People are taking part in an anti-government rally in downtown Kiev. They are speaking against disorder in the country, and we're demanding reforms. People are holding flags of Ukraine, balloons with Ukraine symbols, and chanting, "We are starving. God save us from these authorities. Impeach Poroshenko." And the crowd is getting larger and larger and larger. Because as we know, the U.S. government came in, overthrew the elected government, put in this puppet regime, and the country right now is collapsing and falling apart. This is why they're pushing war. Because they realize sooner or later, this 3,500 crowd plus will grow to 10, will go to 20. Soon you'll see hundreds of thousands of people out on the streets demanding Poroshenko, Yatsenyuk, and others leave and be replaced. And it is coming. Of course, here in the United States, the corporate media is out there trying to convince us that the Southeastern people are sick and tired and fed up with the failing peace process, and they just want war. Let's get it over with. Let's just go and attack Kiev. This is what this is what's out there right now. They're trying to convince everyone that the people in the southeastern region who want to be separate and apart in their little area, they want more war. What would be their motivation? There is no motivation there. They just want their area. To go and fight a war would not help their cause. A peace process would help their cause. But what's the motivation on the other side with Kiev? Well, the central bankers, they didn't get what they paid for. They paid for Ukraine. They paid $5 billion. They don't have the southeastern region where all the manufacturing is, and they don't have Crimea. And they realize their country is falling apart. The people can't take it anymore. They're running out of time. And this is why we see a major offensive building. We see the United States has deployed 3 B-52 strategic bombers to Europe on Friday to participate in military exercises with NATO partners in the Baltic region and Poland. The deployment demonstrates the United States' ability to project its flexible, long-range global strike capabilities. And they're doing this because of Russia. And again, what would Russia's motivation be to invade or start a war? None. They're making economic deals all over the world right now. Their economy is fine. Of course, they've been pushing the sanctions. The United States has been pushing sanctions on Russia, trying to destroy their economy. But guess what? It's not working. And they know this. So the United States is considering new strategies to prevent Russia from meddling in Europe, in what some officials describe as an updated version of the Cold War era containment. And this is according to a new report that was just released. The approach involves boosting militaries of allies and potential partners, expanding the North Atlantic Treaty Organization, and increased training exercises. Well, we've seen all of this. They were doing this way before. The longer-term measures stem from recognition that the U.S. and European sanctions alone have completely failed. And it did not get rid of Putin. And we can see they're tired of this. It's time to take it to the next level. And this is what they're doing. The Pentagon right now is drafting plans to deploy new stocks of military equipment, like the new cruise missiles they want to put in Europe, more military assets they want to ship in, more soldiers they want to position. They are preparing. They're getting ready. And it's getting closer and closer to that time period where all hell is going to break loose. We see in the Middle East, the Yemeni people, the Houthis, said, yes, we will go and talk. We agree that we need to have a peaceful solution. And while the peaceful solution is being talked about, Saudi Arabia is out there pushing propaganda that Yemen fired one Scud missile into Saudi Arabia. Now again, what would be the motivation? The Houthis said, listen, we want peace talks. Why would they shoot one Scud missile? It wouldn't do anything. Actually, it would make it worse for them. So we can see right now, this is definitely a false flag event. They wanted this missile to be fired into Saudi Arabia. For one, it was intercepted, supposedly, allegedly, by the Patriot missile system. Who knows? It could have just went off someplace and just broke apart and exploded in the desert somewhere. But they would like to bring in more military assets, and the other is to maybe bring in ground troops to make the case of, they are attacking us in our country. It is time to take it to the next step. And it seems this is where they are headed. Now we see the United States government central bankers are continually out there telling us that the Islamic State is in all the countries they need to get into. Libya, Lebanon, Yemen, Iraq, Syria. It's strange how the Islamic State just goes into those countries the U.S. needs to get into, and the Islamic State is in those countries where they need to get into. How convenient. Because we know this is a proxy army for the U.S., Israel, UK, and other countries. And they're trying to convince us that the Islamic State has now captured another town in Libya. They are building the case. All of this is propaganda, building it up, so they can go into these countries and restore the puppet regimes in each one of these countries. And as we know in Libya, they moved the central bank out of Tripoli because they didn't want it to fall into the hands of the people. So they protected the central bank and they moved it to a different area. Obama is out there and his administration is making the claim that they have bombed and killed 10,000 Islamic State soldiers. But guess what? They cannot back up the claims whatsoever. Pure propaganda. Why would they bomb their own proxy army? It makes no sense. But they had to do something, because all the reports that are coming out there They're saying that the U.S. created the Islamic State along with Israel, UK. They're all involved in this to push their agenda. And now they're against the wall and they're trying to blame it on Assad. They had to come out with, we killed 10,000 of them, just like they, killed Osama bin Laden and then dumped his body off out at sea. These are all lies and propaganda to make you believe that this is what they're doing. So we can see at this point in time, they are making their move to go after Assad, and they're trying to convince everyone that the Islamic State was not created by the United States. But it's failing. It's not working. We see the IMF now is going to hand Iraq $830 million worth of emergency funding to help the battle against the Islamic State. Actually, they're just putting the country more into debt. They do this to every single country. If you notice, every single country the United States has gone into, replaced the elected government, put in a puppet government, all these countries are in debt. They're in collapse. And the central bankers just keep on giving them more and more debt to fight these wars that the United States has started, that they're continuing on with. And this is all part of their plan. We see the Pentagon quietly starts massive new arms deliveries to Iraq. These new arms are going to be shipped off into Syria because they're getting ready for a major offensive against Assad. This is why they've been using the propaganda to convince you Assad and the Islamic State, they're working together. Because the authorization for war allows the United States to go after those countries that the Islamic State is in, and it will make it easier for them to remove Assad because they can say he was working with them, he's a terrorist. This makes it a perfect plan for the United States. And this is what they're trying to do. So all these new weapons, the shipments of this $1.6 billion fund is all going to be siphoned into Syria for this major offensive. And now we're getting reports from Australia, from Julie Bishop, saying that the Islamic State has the capability to build chemical weapons. And there have been several reports of the Islamic State using chlorine gas in Syria. Yes, we know this. Of course, they tried to blame that on Assad, but the Islamic State, which is the proxy army for the United States government, Israel, UK, they have been given chlorine weapons. They are the ones who are using it. And the prohibition of chemical weapons, the Chemical Weapons Watchdog conducted a fact-finding mission in neighboring Syria last year where the Islamic State has been fighting against Assad. And according to the OPCW, chlorine was used systematically and repeatedly in Syria. And who has the chlorine weapons? The Islamic State. It's the same thing we heard when sarin gas was used in Syria. The Free Syrian Army was caught with a cave full of sarin gas. Why would a leader who is fighting for his country use chemical weapons on his own people? This would be like George Washington fighting for the people of the United States to use chemical weapons on the people in the United States. It would make no sense. So we can see at this point in time, Assad would want the backing of his people, the backing of his forces to help fight the Free Syrian Army, to help fight the Islamic State, to push out the invaders the invaders that are invading his country. The stories the United States is pushing out there in the corporate media don't even make sense. So we can see what's coming right now. We can see a major offensive in Syria is coming. We see a major offensive coming in Ukraine. And we're going to have to watch the indicators, because again, as we know, things can change. But right now, it seems like we are directly on path for this to happen. Listen, everyone, thanks a lot for listening. Be well, be safe, and especially be prepared. Thanks a lot.